Okay, hi, my name is Andrea Goyen. I am an educator, and my current role is as Chief Innovation Officer at 10 Strands. And my most recent role was as an Environmental Literacy and Sustainability Coordinator at the San Mateo County Office of Education. We're going to be sharing in this video how a COE can use a data-driven approach to support a high-impact environmental literacy and sustainability initiative. And I have another guest here with me. Naomi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Naomi. I am a sustainability professional, and my most recent role was at the San Mateo County Office of Education as the Green Facilities and Operations Analyst. And I am currently a graduate student with Presidio Graduate School, pursuing my master's in business administration in sustainable solutions.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to get to sharing my screen here, and then I will walk us through the video. So the intended audience for this video is really folks who are working in a county office of education or are supporting work that will take place in a county office of education. And we're representing the California Environmental Literacy Initiative as well in this video. So I'll just jump into that a little bit. So the California Environmental Literacy Initiative is a statewide network that is a collective action network, and it is made up of a bunch of different innovation hubs. So this video is really intended for folks who are in the County Office of Education Innovation Hub, but of course, more people are welcome to watch it and learn from like what's possible in terms of using data, especially for a regional wide approach. So we're going to highlight a best practice, and this best practice is coming from San Mateo County Office of Ed, and Naomi and I both worked there. So we're going to take you through the process of like first of all, what is a countywide environmental literacy initiative, and then the purpose and history of like how we use data in that initiative and how that iterated and evolved over time. And then Naomi will take you through different elements of the model that could be replicable for other counties. And then we'll finish out with just examples of use and lessons learned. So I'll very quickly preview a high impact countywide environmental literacy initiative. So most people watching this are probably very familiar with what a county office does. But as you can see, there's just a ton of different functions like supporting and monitoring education agencies, in providing instruction, like direct instruction, but also developing the education workforce. But a lot of different folks in the county office are going to do things like leading a high impact initiative. And so we're here to talk about the initiative that San Mateo County launched in 2017, which is focused on providing backbone support to San Mateo County schools and prioritizing environmental literacy and preparing leaders to integrate environmental sustainability and climate resilient practices across all facets of what goes on in a school. So in the campus, curriculum, community, and culture. And San Mateo County is the first county office in the state to do this. And so we've had a lot of like we've built this model in a way that is meant to be replicated in other counties. So a lot of other counties have now come online with having an environmental literacy and sustainability coordinator or having an initiative. And we're working with different folks to develop those, taking that whole systems approach. So this over here talks about the strategic goals that we have in our county office. And as you can see, when you think about strategic goals, like every district having a baseline assessment and a plan, or every student graduating environmentally literate, immediately your mind is going to go to like, well, how far have you gotten? What's the data to show? And so that's why we started to realize like we really needed to do a lot with data in this initiative. So we'll get into talking about that in a bit. But first, just to go a little deeper on the initiative, there's quite a few different elements of it. So capacity building programs, stakeholder networks, different annual summits and recognition programs. We also offered a lot of customized technical assistance in the last 3 years of the initiative, and a ton of resources. So these were all different elements that we needed to track over time with data. So I'll give now a little bit of the history of that data-driven approach and how things developed. So before I do, just really quickly, here's the San Mateo County context. So it's a medium-sized county that goes from very, very high urban density all the way down to like very rural. And there's 23 different school districts, and they are operating across 15 cities and 5 towns. But as you can imagine, because our student population is around like 95,000 or so now at this point, because that's 2019-20 data. There's a lot of small school districts in this county. So I'll start off with just the history that happened in the first couple years. We really started with just assessing the validity of our initial programs and pilots. So like I said, we were the first county office in the state to do this. So we had a pretty robust advisory group that was from all over the state, kind of saying like, well, try out this program, try out this effort. And people were very curious to see like what was the impact of those. So the data really was at the start, just kind of looking at that programmatic data, providing funding, providing reports to funding partners. And that eventually evolved into a pretty robust annual report that we could use with funders and partners and different decision makers. And I'll just really quickly, I'm going to pop out here to just show you what that looks like. So this is from our teacher fellowship program. So in our program report, we had like a program overview, what were some of the program requirements, and then getting deeper into like who participated in the program. And we ran this program over quite a few years. So we would talk about like who were the first time fellows, who are the return fellows. And this is just the type of thing that funders wanted to see to test the validity of the program. But that all got turned into like a pretty robust annual report, especially because we worked with PhD candidate Nama Sadan, who really encouraged us to like take all these little program reports and combine them together into one larger annual report. So we were able to do that and really be able to articulate our high level impact numbers. How many districts are we working with? How much money were we able to fundraise? And then we'd get into like putting all those little individual reports, like a summary of them, and then people could take a look at it. So that was a big leap forward for us that we started in our third year of like collecting it all together and really saying like, here's the overall picture. So that actually led us to also put that data into a filterable dashboard so that people could see some of those relationships that we were having in the first 5 years of the initiative. Oops. So I'm actually going to pop out to that if I can and show you what that looks like. So we didn't really get to putting this in dashboard form until our 5th year, but once we did, we could see like, oh, this is really valuable for other people to be able to look at, like our program, like our directors and our county superintendent, just to get a better understanding of like who's participating in different programs. But also we started to get a lot of requests from the districts who'd be like, how many teachers have participated over the years? So we could say like, okay, well, go to this website now and you can just like click in and find, you can find like what district you're from, and you can actually look at the numbers of teachers. So this led us to provide a little bit more transparency to the data that we didn't have before. Okay, so let me go back to, sorry, I'm clicking a bunch of different things. Let me go back to the slide deck, take you through some of the other parts. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen with the slide deck. So we realized that like that idea of like shifting to being more public facing, well, we saw that there was a lot of reason to do that for capturing a bigger narrative of what was going on in each district. So we had a lot of different partners that we've been working with in San Mateo County, and they were asking questions like, well, what's the progress in different districts? And because also in our county office, we were working with, like I was the coordinator for 5 years straight, and Naomi came in the 3rd year, but we worked with interim staff, different Climate Corps fellows each year. And so it was hard to always tell the narrative of 23 districts to new staff every year. So we had this idea of like, let's document their story. And so we started to put it together, and I'll just show you an example of what that looked like. We developed these district profiles where we would keep track of some really high level information about the district up here. And then we went into more of like a narrative of like, how is this district doing in different elements, like in the campus and in the curriculum. And this was really helpful. It was helpful for us. It was helpful for partners. But as you can see, it's a lot of text and it's a lot to maintain. And so we wanted an easier way to show that data to partners. So what we ended up doing is that we ended up putting some of that data on our filterable website. So you can see here, it says district profile data. It's a little bit bigger. And so instead of having to update all these different individual documents, what we realized that we could do is we could take some of that static information, like saying, this is what a demographics is, and we could make it filterable so that a person could just come here and like, let's say they wanted to see that same district, Ravenswood, they would just filter for just Ravenswood. And then if you wanted to see the institutional culture commitments for Ravenswood, you would come down here and do this. And so that saved us a lot of like time and effort of updating a profile every single year, because we could just update into a spreadsheet, which was much easier for us to do instead of having to turn everything into like a narrative sentence. So this was a pretty big game changer for us to be able to make that happen. And that happened in our 5th year. So it took us a while to get to that level. And then the last thing I want to share is just, people were not just interested in what is happening in one single district, but like, what are the patterns of progress and change across the entire region? So that was mostly for technical assistance partners who were like, I want to work with, I want to see how many districts have gardens or how many districts are doing waste efforts. And then they could look for those gaps and figure out who needs to be served. So that went from like us doing this with like very internal spreadsheets to again having this like public facing dashboard with visualizations. And that's on the countywide landscape data. So that, just scroll down to some of the ones that a lot of these are like equity indicators that we were really interested in. But when you get down to here, it helped our partners to understand like, well, which districts really have like a whole district commitment, like having a sustainability committee or a facilities dashboard. Which districts have passed different board policies that are related to things that our partners really cared about, like energy and water and waste. So this helped them, the idea of this is to help them get more strategic and also us more strategic. So I think that's it for like me giving a high level history. I'm going to turn it over to Naomi now to get into like the elements of the model that are really replicable and scalable to other counties.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. You can see it, Andrea?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, great. And okay, so when we think about elements that are replicable and scalable, I think the foundation here is going to be the design consideration. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how to make this scalable and make it replicable. So I really encourage everybody watching this video to take some time to look at how we've set up the sheets, and I'm going to show you some of those in once I've talked about the design considerations. And the idea here was that everything that we do would be accessible to all of our constituents, and be able to go down to one district, but also up to a county office of ed or anybody else who's working at a regional level on environmental literacy. So some things that we did specifically to address these accessibility and scalability concerns was we did decide to use Google Sheets so that we could work in a collaborative way. We had Climate Corps fellows coming in and out annually, but also so that it could be more easily shown to others. So we did use Google Sheets. And something else we did was really try and design our sheets to be accessible to all levels of data users. So we wanted the final visualizations and how the spreadsheets were set up to be able to be understood readily by people who maybe are more advanced, they've been working with Google Sheets, but also to people who are maybe newer to thinking about data. And going along with both of those considerations was we really wanted to try and develop a system that was going to minimize the amount of budget and staffing resources needed to set them up and also to maintain them over time. So another design consideration or principle that we used was transparency for an external audience. We really wanted to transition out of using these static reports and into something that was a little more interactive and could be more easily used by different types of stakeholders to find the answers that they were looking for from the data. So, we have to show one graph that can help with a lot of different stakeholders. So how do we do that? So one way that we did that was by deciding to use Tableau Public, which is sorry, apologies if you hear cat sounds behind me, but Tableau Public visuals are available to all, and they are also downloadable. So you, as somebody who's watching this, wants to recreate one of the Tableau visuals, you can download them and recreate them yourself using the Tableau software. we also tried to design the spreadsheets to be easily used for both Google Charts, which is like an embedded platform, and for Tableau Public. So in some cases we succeeded, and in other cases they really, as two different software visualization tools, we did need to adapt as we go. The last design consideration I'll mention before looking at the sheets was we really wanted to show behavior and impact over time. So the goal was to create tracking and systems that have the ability to be both time-stamped and cumulative, especially with some of our campus leverage points and our program data. We wanted to be able to show what we were able to accomplish in 1 year, and what we can see over time, in all history, especially for some of these things, the time scales are very different, especially when you look at or try and compare something between a facilities master plan or a board policy. So I'm going to show 2 different visualizations as examples of this. And the first one we'll take a look at is the program visualization. So this is the impact that our teacher fellowship program had. So I'm actually going to go back here and look at what the spreadsheet looked like. So this spreadsheet for us really became our sheet for naming conventions and also to standardize how we tracked data across all of our different programs. So you can see here we have like primary for our districts and then primary for schools. And then I'm going to show you our Tableau data dashboard. So we really synthesized down to what were the most important data points that we wanted to show, and created a data set that had like just the most important things so that we could, and just the things that fed into the Tableau visualizations. This helped really minimize the amount of spreadsheets that we had, and make it a more simple data flow for people. So the example I was going to share first was our Tableau for our program engagement. So that would be on this tab, and we have the, each cohort, just the total number of teachers. And again, we're using pretty simple data sets here. There's a lot of like zeros and ones to show progress over time. Okay, so then I'm going to move out of this one and share. Yeah, I can share engagement. So from that spreadsheet, we would use the Tableau software, publish it to Tableau Public, and then embed the Tableau Public link directly into our own webpage. And we chose that format so that we could add a little bit more about an overview, what the visualization is, and then our own analysis recommendations as well. So we do have those for each of them. Okay, I think then I can share an example from the cumulative data as well, a little bit more closely. Sorry, screen share. Tech issues. Apologies, Andrea. So the next ready to use replicable resource that I can share is this ELSI Google Sheet and data visualization formatting instructions and guidelines. So this is something that really helped us with those design considerations I shared about accessibility and scalability and thinking about transitions. So I developed this with our Climate Corps fellows to help them understand what our data set should look like and how to create data sets that were very clean and could be easily used for visualizations. I think once you get into making visuals, you'll realize very quickly any things around like naming conventions that are wrong or different across different sheets is going to really slow down your progress. So highly recommend taking a look through this resource and seeing which things you're already doing or which things you could use to improve your data process. So something that we did was like think about the development of spreadsheets. Like when we make a new spreadsheet, what is it for and why are we making that sheet? I'm trying to minimize the number of sheets, easy to track over time. how do we title them? How do we think about those sheets? Is it going to be something that you use internally or externally, or is it really for both? And titling tabs, titling columns and rows, like really thinking about those things ahead of time. So it's easier when you look at a sheet a year from now, you know exactly what you were trying to get across. And even in here, we're going into some pretty good detail about how to create clean sheets, like not leaving blanks or columns, or making sure that all the data in when you're doing data entry is the same format. So if you're going to use 2018, make sure you're using it in the same way, and that will really go a long way towards making your data more accessible to others. Even like fonts, colors, alignments, things like that are more about when you're having somebody look at the actual sheet itself and less about the visualization, but very helpful to make sure that anyone who's using your sheets can understand it. So that is the last resource I was going to share. And so I'll pause and turn it back over to Andra.
Okay, great. Oops. Thanks, Naomi. So I'll just share my screen for this one last slide just to talk about some of the examples of use and key lessons learned. So I will say that I know there's a lot here, but I'll just walk you through it all. So internally, like the use that we had for this data was to support strategic planning on how to engage our districts, also to advocate with our director and our county superintendent of like why we needed to increase staff. Like we could show like there's a demand for this level of services, and this level of services takes this amount of time, and we've got that demand from blank number of districts. So in order to meet that, we really need to increase our staff. So that was very critical to being able to like tell that narrative. And then just like going a little further on that, like telling the story of change over time and our impact. It really helped us advocate for ourselves. And I think everybody who works in a county office understands the importance of that, of like how to really say like, no, we're valuable and we're contributing to something really big here. So that's why I encourage folks to do the data driven approach. The examples of use for the external audience, again, was to really support, I'll start with just grassroots leaders. So working with students and teachers, it's very hard for them to have access to data or to have the time to go and find all that data. So when we did things like figuring out how many districts had board policies, or, like how many districts were doing certain initiatives like zero waste, it gave them the chance to say like, okay, now I can use that as an advocacy pitch to my board or to my superintendent or to my principal. And that was really empowering for folks. And then providing the data for technical assistance of partners was also really important, so that they could get more involved with the different districts, and they could reach out to districts and say like blank number of districts have done this, would you like to join? And then engaging funding partners as well was just another way to again show that impact and like have them be a part of what we're doing. I think the lessons learned, Naomi gave a lot of lessons along the way. So I think I'll just kind of skip to this part where like you want to really focus on collecting data that fosters buy-in. And so that could be buy-in from district and site level constituents, or buy-in from your own like supervisors at your own office, or buy-in from the grassroots level, but find stuff that's going to get people excited. And then celebrate success annually. Like you can track over time, and you can share case studies of data sets that were really like that really intrigued people. You can like write those stories up as narratives and inspire other people. And then the last thing I'll just share here is like ask for help. So I always like I was the first person to have a role like this in a county office, and I intentionally designed these things to be replicable. And it took me a long time to figure out a lot of these strategies. Like there's no way I could have come up with even half of what we came to by year 5 in my first year. It was just me with no data background, and my Climate Corps fellow who had very little data background as well, right? So it took a really long time with lots of iterations, with lots of different people thinking about this. And so don't feel like you have to like you have to kick off with this high level of data analysis, but at the same time, you can start a lot further along than we were able to, because now you've got all these resources. And then also just thank the people who helped you along the way. So I just want to end this video with a huge thank you to all the Climate Corps fellows who contributed to this work over time, to Naomi, of course, for her intense work on figuring out how to do Tableau, who Naomi also didn't have any data background, but she was able to really pull that forward. And then a big thank you to Nama Sagan, who really taught us what it means to clean data and do that well, and for introducing us to UC Berkeley Data Discovery Program. And if you want to be connected with any of those people along our journey who helped us, be happy to connect you with them as well. So that's it for this video. Don't hesitate to reach out if we can be helpful.